Remember the first time you raced home, twisted the rabbit ears just right, and saw a teenager in green trunks cartwheel out of the Batcave? Here's the question nobody asked in 1966. What did it really cost a 19-year-old ice skating prodigy named Burt Ward to become Robin, all before your pot roast finished in the oven? Within his first 4 days on set, he'd dislocate a finger hanging from a runaway Batmobile door, break his nose under a collapsing ceiling plank, and swallow 3 shrink me pills the network insisted would tame an overeager silhouette. Meanwhile, studio bosses paid him less than the boom mic operator, but still expected him to trade kicks with a young Bruce Lee, who flat out refused to lose on camera. If that's how the week started, imagine what the next 2 years looked like. So keep score as we dig in pills, paychecks, and near-fatal stunts, and drop myth or fact in the comments every time you think Hollywood's pulling our collective leg. Let's see who among us, longtime viewers, can still spot a stunt double when the cape flies. Sparks on ice. Childhood. Long before the cape, little Burt John Gervis Jr. was already drawing crowds on ice skates. If you grew up in the late 40s, you might recall those touring extravaganzas that set up under canvas roofs, the smell of popcorn mixing with cold rink air. Burt's dad ran one of them, Rhapsody on Ice, and by the time our future boy wonder was 2 years old, he could carve flawless figure eights, while most toddlers were still teetering on linoleum. A syndicated oddities magazine even dubbed him the youngest professional skater in America, printing his baby-faced grin right next to Ripley-style curiosities. That rink life handed him the nickname Sparky. With the house lights dimmed for a finale, he'd click his steel blades together, tiny orange sparks flickering across the dark like 4th of July fireflies. Imagine being in that audience, watching a toddler light up the ice while the band played Chattanooga Choo Choo. Those cheers were the first taste of applause he'd spend a lifetime chasing. Off the rink, Burt was a comic book fiend just like the rest of us post-war kids swapping dog-eared issues at the 5 and dime. He stacked Superman and Superboy beside his bed, studying every punch, every swoosh of a cape, maybe even dreaming himself onto those splash pages. And on Friday nights, the whole Gervis family tuned in for George Reeves's Adventures of Superman, the show that proved heroes could step right out of a drawing and into your living room. If you remember craning closer to that black and white screen the way I did, you know exactly how deep those images burned into a youngster's imagination. Little did Sparky know the skills he was picking up, balance, timing, the confidence to perform when a crowd leaned forward, would prep him for a much wilder spotlight. Because once puberty hit and a high school gym teacher introduced him to the crack of a breaking board, Burt's ice sparks would ignite into something far more explosive. Next up, the brown belt teenager who befriended a not yet famous Bruce Lee, and the audition trick that fooled every casting agent in town. The boy next dojo, teenage martial arts mania. By sophomore year, the ice rink had given way to the school gym, and Burt's new addiction wasn't figure eights, it was the crack of a pine board splitting under a heel kick, track practice, wrestling drills. He still showed up, but only so the coaches would unlock the locker room. The second that bell rang, he sprinted to a strip mall dojang lit by humming fluorescent tubes and the sweet smell of liniment. If you've ever stood barefoot on varnished hardwood, bowing to a stern instructor who spoke more with whistles than words, you know the ritual. Within 18 months, he'd muscled his way to a brown belt in Taekwondo, a rank that meant 2 things in 1963 America. You could drop into a flawless back stance, and nobody at the soda shop dared tug your Letterman jacket. But fate had one more test kick lined up. Burt's first apartment. Remember your own humble starter pad with peeling paint and coin laundry hum? Sat along a row of low-rent units where dreamers traded gossip in the hallway. One August afternoon, still dripping sweat from sparring class, he felt a tap on the shoulder. "You study Taekwondo?" the stranger asked. Burt nodded, surprised anyone recognized the uniform. The man flashed a polite grin, introduced himself as Bruce Lee, and invited Burt upstairs for tea. No one was famous yet. Lee's infant son, Brandon, dozed in a crib, while the two young fighters compared stances, swapped drill tips, and even scrounged spare change for noodle runs into LA's Chinatown. Picture them. Two hungry 20-somethings throwing slow-motion sidekicks on a balcony the size of a card table, never guessing the pop culture tidal wave waiting around the bend. Those balcony workouts forged a quiet friendship. Lee drilled lightning-fast hand combos. Burt countered with textbook spinning kicks. They laughed about bruises, traded comic books, and imagined a future where martial arts might actually pay the rent. For now, though, Burt still juggled community college classes and a part-time gig at his father's real estate office. Just another kid hustling in mid-60s LA. Then came the bulletin board flyer that would flip his world cape-side up. Casting, new color TV series, needs athletic youthful energy. The title wasn't listed, but whispers swirled, a live-action Batman. No agent? No resume? No problem, Sparky figured. Those brown belt bruises were about to earn him a shortcut, straight through Hollywood's guarded gates. Up next, the guerrilla audition that tricked studio executives, the broken board that sealed the deal, and the 3-day callback gauntlet that turned a realtor's apprentice into TV's youngest action hero. Guerrilla audition, breaking boards, and breaking in. January 1965. Hollywood's pilot season frenzy hummed like a switchboard, but to a 20-year-old property office clerk, it felt as distant as the moon. Still, when Burt overheard neighbors chirping about a new Batman series, the childhood comic fanatic in him refused to sit quietly. No agent? No acting class? He marched into a Beverly Boulevard talent agency anyway, scrawled his basics on their clipboard, and, when asked who represented him, boldly wrote the name of the very desk clerk, shooing him away. If you ever sweet-talked your way past a velvet rope back in the day, you know that wicked thrill, heart-thumping, breath steady, praying no one calls the bluff. The open call itself was a cattle drive, rows of hopefuls in drainpipe slacks rehearsing holy gee puns under their breath. Burt filled out the official studio form, listing taekwondo, brown belt, football captain, and board-breaking demonstration available upon request. Casting staff smirked, but they let him read a few pages of Robin-isms. When his voice cracked on holy haberdashery, he feared he'd blown it, until one assistant whispered, "Come back tomorrow in athletic gear." Home he flew, phoned a sparring buddy named Paul, and grabbed a 1-inch pine plank from the hardware store. Day 2 opened on a bare soundstage, dotted with crash mats. Producers wanted a simple tumble. Burt offered fireworks. He flipped Paul over his hip, rolled to his feet, then lifted the plank for a crowd that suddenly fell silent. One key eye later, the board split clean as a celery stalk, the two halves clattering like castanets. Older readers will recall Jack LaLanne busting handcuffs on live TV. Same gasp, same ripple of applause, but this time, it landed a job. Day 3 brought the screen test, complete with tights, mask, and Adam West looming 6'2" beside him. Under blinding arc lamps, they rattled off riddles, traded mock punches, and finished with that now iconic double fist pow pose. Studio chief William Dozier leaned over his cigar, muttered, "That kid's got more chutzpah than payroll," and sent the Polaroids to ABC. Then, silence. 2.5 weeks crawled by. Burt patched roof leaks at rental houses, half convinced the dream had evaporated. At last, the agency receptionist rang, "Get in here. Sign a pile of papers. Greenway Productions says you're Robin." He barely glanced at salary figures. A mistake we'll revisit. Simply swapped the spelling to Burt, looked sharper in block letters, and traded Gervis for his mother's maiden name, Ward. He had leapt the velvet rope. Only problem, the small print included more than a TV contract. It came stapled to a pharmacy bottle, labeled "for costume alterations only." Because in one test shot, network censors saw a teenage silhouette they deemed too dynamic. Up next, the covert hormone pills, the explosive first week that sent Burt to the ER 4 times, and why his paycheck still couldn't cover the hospital bills. Shrink pill showdown, the bulge crisis. If you were already shaving in '66, you remember how the networks still bowed to church groups with clipboards. 1 month before Batman premiered, ABC's Standards office called an emergency meeting. Their gripe? Robin's silhouette. In those snug jersey tights, 19-year-old Burt revealed more boy wonder than sponsors thought polite. The answer came in a discreet paper bag, hormone tablets meant to flatten any hint of masculine enthusiasm. "I took 3, Burt later admitted. "Felt like my voice dropped into the bat cave." He stopped cold, hid the pills under a couch cushion, and asked wardrobe to stitch a thicker modesty panel instead. Executives grumbled, but the cape covered enough that the letters of complaint trickled to a halt. Still, the scare stuck with him. Imagine being 20 on the hottest new color show, yet worrying every close-up might get you fired for biology. The network never apologized, but they did offer a consolation prize: more stunts. Burt's pay, barely $350 a week, came with a side clause: no stunt double unless one could be found of similar stature. Translation: you're on your own, kid. And that leads us to the week that turned Gotham City into a revolving door at the emergency room. Coming up, dynamite blasts, a runaway Batmobile door, and the ER nurse who finally asked, "Son, is your job worth this?" Hospital punch card. First week battering. Day 1. On the Batcave set looked innocent enough. A simple shot of the Batmobile tearing out past the plywood stalactites. But Adam West was off filming close-ups, so the studio plopped Burt into the passenger seat beside a burly stuntman he'd never met. Action! Tires screamed, the car fishtailed, and Burt's door swung open like a saloon shutter. He caught the frame with his pinky, dangled over gravel, and hauled himself back in before they hit daylight. Finger dislocated, ego bruised, scene wrapped. Then they let him see a doctor. Day 2, a rooftop fight. The prop man overpacked a flash pot. When the powder blew, the concussion wave flattened 3 crew members and left Burt's ears howling like a dial tone at midnight. No time for rest. They stuffed cotton in his canals and moved on. Day 3, same week. Ceiling boards weakened by that blast finally let go. One chunk, knotty 2x4, kissed Burt across the bridge of the nose. Blood on the cape. Quick trip to emergency, straight back to set with butterfly strips. He hadn't cashed a paycheck yet and was already on a first-name basis with the triage nurse. Day 4 capped the gauntlet. A cannon charge meant to flip a cardboard crate went off early, fireballing near Burt's boot. The blast singed his tights and peppered his calf with splinters. Wardrobe patched the costume. Burt limped through the next take because production couldn't afford a reshoot. Think back. As kids, we saw nothing but BAM, graphics, and candy-bright stunt smoke. No one told us the red flashing off those tights was sometimes real blood. By Friday, the studio doctor finally hissed, "Get this boy a stunt double." The producers replied, "Find us a lookalike under 5'9" who'll work for scale." Spoiler, they never did. But the bumps kept coming, this time in Burt's paycheck. Because while he was swallowing aspirin by the fistful, Adam West was quietly pocketing 5 times the salary. Next, the friendship that survived that lopsided pay gap, and the coast-to-coast groupie stampede that nearly broke it apart. Bat bucks and best friends, the hush-hush pay gap. When the ratings shot into the stratosphere, most of us assumed the dynamic duo shared the loot. But ABC's ledger told a different story. Adam West hauled in upward of $1,800 a week, plus residuals. Decent coin for the era, while Burt's contract still sat at roughly $300 a week, 50, no residuals, no bump for stunts. The network dressed it up as experience differential. Yet every bruised rib reminded Burt who really paid the physical toll. Did it breed bad blood? Not the way you'd expect. Both men were Depression-era kids. Counting pennies came naturally. Adam slipped Burt gas money on long appearance tours, cracked jokes about buying the next Batburger, and once marched into the producer's office to argue for a raise, only to be told sidekicks don't sell cereal boxes. Burt chalked it up to Hollywood math and focused on keeping the chemistry alive. After all, the on-screen banter felt like 2 big brothers joshing each other. That vibe, 2 pals against the world, was real, and viewers our age sensed it. Still, the gap stung late at night in those motel rooms between autograph lines. Burt's suitcase held 3 sets of tights, a bottle of liniment, and a dog-eared checkbook that never quite balanced. Adams held tailored suits and first-class ticket stubs. Yet every morning they zipped into costume, side by side, trading corny puns and shoulder claps that rang louder than the stunt explosions. Imagine your old bowling buddy hitting the jackpot while you kept score at the lanes. That was Burt's daily tightrope. But the road appearances brought a different jackpot, one that didn't discriminate by salary. Groupies, women in beehive hairdos and gold wedding bands queued for autographs that ended up as hotel room keys. And soon Robin discovered that his lower paycheck didn't stop higher trouble from knocking after midnight. Next up, the coast-to-coast fan frenzy. The jealous husband with a revolver and Burt's mad underwear dash through a Texas parking lot that still has hotel managers laughing today. Married fans and the great underwear escape. By season 2, Batman's Nielsen numbers equaled the World Series, and personal appearance tours became a second full-time job. Remember those suburban shopping mall openings with balloon arches and marching bands? Adam and Burt cut more ribbons than city mayors. The pay was decent, but the real perk, at least to a single 20-year-old, arrived after dark. Every flight landed to find a small army of autograph seekers, some wearing homemade capes, others hiding wedding rings in purse pockets. It started innocently. A quick signature on a glossy 8x10, a backstage photo, maybe coffee after the local TV station promo. Then came room numbers slipped under doors, lipstick messages on taxi receipts, promises whispered fast enough to outrun conscience. Burt kept a pocket notebook just for scheduling these meet and greets, figuring polite organization was better than chaos. Dallas, spring of '67, proved organization wasn't enough. After finishing a Friday night charity gala, Burt escorted a statuesque blonde fan back to the hotel. The plan, a quiet nightcap. Then lights out before Saturday's parade. But halfway through a second Manhattan, thunder shook the hallway. 3 meat-hook knocks on the door and a basso roar. "Open up, Robin! I know she's in there!" Panic blinked across the woman's face. "He's was my husband," she stammered. Too late. The doorknob rattled, hinges groaned, and wood splintered. Burt grabbed the nearest clothing, just his boxer shorts, yanked the patio slider, and vaulted into the courtyard. Barefoot on sharp gravel, capeless, he sprinted past a Chevy Impala and straight into the motel pool fence, vaulted that too, and kept running. Police sirens cut through the Texas night. Officers scooped him up 4 blocks away, goosebumped and gasping, tossed him a towel, and demanded ID. Imagine explaining at age 21, wearing nothing but polka dot shorts, "I'm Robin, from Batman. The guy with the gun back there? Wronged husband." Reports were filed, charges dropped, and the studio paid the quietest settlement in Lone Star history. Adam West howled with laughter, but slipped Burt a fresh per diem, quipping, "Kid, next time check for a tan line where the ring used to be." Lesson learned. Tights may protect against TV villains, but not jealous spouses. Yet jealous husbands were kittens compared to the silent fury Burt faced next. A showdown with his old balcony sparring partner, Bruce Lee. When the Green Hornet stormed Gotham for a crossover nobody wanted to lose. The showdown that wasn't. Bruce Lee and the Draw. The summer of '66 found Hollywood in a ninjutsu arms race. ABC had its smash hit Batman, but across the lot, producers were prepping the Green Hornet, banking on martial arts wizardry to one-up Gotham's fistfights. Cross-promotion was a no-brainer. Bring Kato and the Hornet into Batman's ratings juggernaut. Let the heroes spar. Watch the ad dollars roll. Except for one stumbling block, Bruce Lee refused to lose. The draft script handed to Burt contained a tidy climax. Robin ducks a roundhouse, flips Kato, and cuffs him to a lamppost while Batman trades quips with the Hornet. Burt skimmed the pages, eyebrows climbing. This wasn't some stunt extra. This was Bruce, the balcony buddy, who'd once chided him on sloppy footwork over cups of jasmine tea. Rehearsal day arrived on stage 14. Bruce ambled in, wearing Kato's sleek mask, eyes gleaming. Yet he wouldn't meet Burt's glance. The director barked, "Let's see the fight." Bruce's first punch sliced so close, Burt tasted the wind. Instinct flared. He backpedaled, slipped, and heard a cameraman yell, "Robin, quit looking like a yellow chicken!" Laughter rippled. Burt planted his stance, braced for contact. Then Bruce broke character, doubled over, howling. Turns out, the snub was an elaborate prank dreamed up during lunch. Bruce would scare Robin silly, then crack the ice with a hug. When the giggles died, Lee marched to the producer, script in hand, and stated, quiet as a drawn blade, "Cato does not lose. We settle for a draw, or I walk." There was no second opinion. The script changed before sunset. Filming the revised duel took 7 takes, every blow measured like chess. At cut, the two friends clasped forearms, sweat dripping, respect sealed. The show aired with no victor, but fans still debate frame by frame who had the edge. If you taped that episode on your old RCA and froze the final kick, you might swear Cato's heel stops an inch from Robin's chin, just enough for honor, not enough for bruises. Bruce and Burt never sparred on screen again, yet for years, a holiday card crossed the Pacific. To my balcony brother, keep those boards breaking. But boards weren't the only things cracking. In the lull after Batman's cancellation, Burt's career nosedived into B-movie oblivion until a rock and roll madman named Frank Zappa tossed him a vinyl lifeline that puzzled every DJ in America. Side a curveball, Frank Zappa and Boy Wonder, I Love You. When Batman wrapped in 1968, Burt discovered Hollywood's quickest disappearing act, typecasting. Casting calls dried up faster than a Roy Rogers drive-thru, and magazine covers that once chased him now pitched the new wave of counterculture rebels. Enter Frank Zappa, the mustachioed maestro of avant rock, who phoned Burt with an offer so OD it felt like a prank call. "Hey man, let's cut a single. You read fan mail over psychedelic horns. I'll layer in kazoo and orchestra hits. We'll call it Boy Wonder, I Love You." Right, because nothing screams chart topper like reciting Teen Crush letters in costume cadence. Yet Burt, desperate to prove he wasn't just tights and holy puns, said yes. One midnight session at TTG Studios on Sunset, Zappa conducting a 9-piece band while Burt delivered lines like, "Dear Robin, if I send you my allowance, will you marry me?" In earnest, Boy Wonder sincerity. The result? A 45 RPM curiosity that DJs spun once, shrugged, and moved to the next Beatles track. Sales tanked, but cult status blossomed. College radio jocks filed it alongside Zappa's strangest bootlegs. Collectors today drop triple digits for a mint copy. For Burt, the real payoff was intangible. Proof he'd step outside Gotham's shadow, no matter how kooky the path. And if any of you vinyl hounds still own that single, cue it up tonight and let the needle remind you how downright weird late 60s pop culture could get. Still, one novelty record couldn't shore up an actor's mortgage. So Burt turned to grindhouse sets, rubber monster suits, and scripts that paid in free lunches, until fate wandered in on 4 giant paws and rewrote his legacy yet again. Next stop, Killer Tomatoes, Robo Chicks, and the gentle giant dogs that rescued Burt's career and countless canine lives long after Hollywood forgot his number. B-movie limbo, monsters, mad scientists, and a paycheck. The early 70s were unforgiving to anyone whose resume read former Boy Wonder. Big studios chased grit and anti-heroes, tights were out, sideburns were in. Burt, now pushing 30, hustled anywhere film cans rolled. First stop, foreign horror flicks shot faster than you could say action. One week, he battled telepathic tomatoes. The next, he dodged a rubber ghoul on a Malibu soundstage that doubled as a lunar crater. Remember those double-feature drive-ins where speakers crackled and popcorn butter tasted like motor oil? Chances are you glimpsed Burt under a latex monster mask without realizing it. Pay was scale, scripts were thin, but he treated every role like prime time. In Scream, Evelyn Scream, he played a detective whose badge looked printed at Kinko's. Robo-Chick cast him as a scientist, racing a homicidal android. Legend says they reused his Batman tights, dyed silver, to save on wardrobe. The movies rarely hit theaters for more than a weekend, Yet cash kept the lights on, and a new skill emerged: self-parody. Burt learned to wink at the camera, just enough to show audiences he was in on the B-movie joke. Still, when the sixth low-budget horror in a row wrapped at 3 a.m., and the director offered stale donuts instead of overtime, Burt felt the curtain dropping on Act 2 of his life. Fame had dimmed, finances tightened, and the razor-sharp kicks that once impressed Bruce Lee now aggravated a creaky knee. Something had to change, and change came on 4 enormous drooling feet. Up next, the Great Dane that stole Burt's heart, the rescue ranch that saved 15,000 dogs, and how a sidekick with a shrinking career created a dog food empire that boasts 20-year lifespans. Canine Crusade, The Gentle Giants Era, late 80s, a film set in upstate New York wrapped after midnight, leaving Burt alone with a styrofoam cup of cold coffee and the creeping worry that sidekick fame might never translate into retirement security. Then, a crew member mentioned a litter of abandoned Great Dane pups at a nearby shelter, too large for most families to adopt. Burt drove over just to look, and you already know how that ends. He walked out, cradling a gangly, blue-gray pup whose paws dangled past his elbows like overgrown mittens. One Dane led to 2 to 10, and before long, Burt and his wife Tracy were converting their modest ranch property into a full-time rescue. They named it Gentle Giants, a promise as much as a brand, and opened their gates to every oversized breed the county shelters couldn't place. St. Bernards, Irish wolfhounds, mastiffs wider than a VW bug. If you've ever shared your living room with a dog whose head clears the coffee table, you know the chaos. Tail knocks over lamp, drool flings across the couch, but the love? Titanic. Rescue costs mounted, food bills that could finance a small diner, vet visits that rivaled college tuition. Burt pored over canine nutrition journals, convinced commercial kibble robbed big breeds of years. Nights once spent memorizing lines now stretched past dawn, mixing experimental diets in galvanized tubs. After countless test batches, he claimed a formula that slashed bloat and boosted longevity. They bagged it under the Gentle Giants label, stocked it at Walmart, and waited. Skeptics scoffed, an actor hawking dog food, yet customer reviews snowballed. Stories surfaced of Danes hitting 16, 17, even 20 years old. Whether miracle or marketing, sales funded more rescues, more adoptions, more tail thumps against kitchen cabinets. To date, Burt and Tracy tally over 15,000 dogs saved. A number that makes Nielsen ratings look quaint. When longtime fans spot Burt at conventions these days, it's less holy autograph and more, "You saved my newfie, thank you." He still signs photos, sure, but he also slips a coupon for kibble and a tip about hip joint supplements. Because the sidekick, who once leapt off rooftops, now lifts senior dogs into SUVs. Next, a cameo comeback that let 80-year-old Burt Don Robbins colors one last time, and the final reflection on whether the risk, the pills, and the punches were worth the legend they built together. Cameo comeback, Earth 66, and the last Cape Swing. Pop culture loves a victory lap, and Burt's arrived in 2019, 5 decades after his first bat signal. The CW's crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths planned a blink and you'll miss it homage called Earth 66. Producers phoned the now 74-year-old Ward. How'd you feel about slipping into a red-trimmed sweater, walking your Great Dane, and muttering a worried, holy crimson skies as the multiverse crumbles overhead? No stunt falls, no hormone pills, just a sly wink for lifelong fans. Burt laughed, agreed, and flew to Vancouver with a Gentle Giants rescue dog in tow. On set, young crew members whispered, "That's the Robin," while cinematographers angled the shot to echo Gotham's classic Dutch tilts. For 6 on-screen seconds, the multiverse paused to honor the kid who once dangled by a pinky over Highway 101. The cameo lit up social media. Baby boomers emailed screenshots to grandkids. Collectible shops moved vintage lunchboxes overnight. Burt joked during interviews, "Not bad for a sidekick on Social Security," yet the appearance carried a softer triumph. Proof that every smashed nose, every unpaid residual, had woven itself into pop culture DNA too stubborn to fade. And in July 2025, turning 80, Burt sat for a Remind magazine Q&A. Kane resting by his chair, eyes still flaring, boy wonder bright. He recounted the ice sparks, the Bruce Lee prank, the dog-filled ranch. When the reporter asked the secret to longevity, he grinned, "Keep moving, keep laughing, and feed everyone, humans or pups, like they're starring in their own series." Now, as we lower the red phone receiver one final time, we face the question only lifelong viewers can answer. Was the risk that built the legend worth the bruises beneath the tights, legacy, and call to action? Was it worth the cape? So here we are, fellow Saturday matinee veterans, 8 decades after a 2-year TV experiment, and the words "holy" still slip into our vocabulary whenever the grandkids spill juice on the rug. Burt Ward didn't just borrow our childhood. He kept it beating through dog rescues, cult vinyl, and a multiverse cameo that proved lightning can flash twice, even through bifocals. Step back and tally the score. A dislocated finger, a broken nose, 4 ER visits in 1 week, a hormone prescription nobody warned him about, 60 ODD B-movies, 15,000 dogs saved, and a cameo that made Comic-Con crowds roar like 66 all over again. That ledger feels messy until you zoom out and see what really survived. Grit, humor, and a sense that ordinary people can still do extraordinary things with the spotlight, or without it. Now I'm tossing the batarang to you. Hit that like if you learned even one nugget you'd never heard before. Smash subscribe so you won't miss the next rabbit hole into old Hollywood's hidden corridors. And in the comments, answer me this. Which reveal shocked you most? The shrink pill order, the hospital gauntlet, or Bruce Lee's no loss clause? Mark it myth or fact, and tell us why. I'll be lurking down there replying like an old pal at the corner diner, because this channel isn't a monologue. It's our shared scrapbook. Until next time, keep the rabbit ears clipped to the memories. Feed the dogs like they're gentle giants. And remember, heroes aren't measured by capes or paychecks, but by the stories that refuse to fade when the credits roll. See you in the next reel.